boxing in America in general is dying. There's multiple reasons why the sport is actually dying. Multiple people that you can blame. You can blame the fighters themselves for not wanting to participate in major fights. You can blame the promoters for not being able to negotiate amongst each other to be able to make fights. HBO, they closed shop. Showtime closed shop shortly afterwards. Boxing is slowly dwindling away here in the States, man. It's sad to see. Like, what I come from, right, and looking and raised up on boxing, like, we had multiple stars. Manny Pacquiao, huge draw. De La Hoya, huge draw. We had various guys in the sport that were huge draws. I mean, who is that? Who is that guy here in America? We're saying Tank. All right, appealing, casual guy, but is Tank fighting the best opposition out there? See, that's the difference. The difference between, the Floyds and the De La Hoyas, they fought the best opposition. We want to see him knock out somebody. However, he's highly favored in every fight that he has. That's by his choice. These other fighters that came before us, they did it because of legacy. Another guy, everybody always want to tune in and watch, the mostly casuals, and he comes with a different fan base, is Jake Paul. But that's what all the people are attracted to nowadays. So like boxing, I believe that it's slowly dwindling and dying because we need somebody to drive the sport here. Somebody that, that's going to attract those casuals more often than just once or twice a year, man. I just want the money, the same with Tank. This generation is just, that's the way they think. I don't care about championships. I don't care about this. All I care about is just making a better living for my family. And that's it. And I think that actually is hurting boxing as well.
Tim Bradley sounds off. Why Tank Davis is hurting boxing. Crawford, not a star. Can Ring Magazine save the sport? What's good, everybody? It's your boy, Cardinal Red Sports. Let's talk about it. All right, y'all. So Tim Bradley recently gave an interview. And, man, it was very interesting. Shout out to Tim Bradley. Man, I might not always agree with what Tim Bradley has to say, but I think Tim Bradley hit some really key points on why the sport is dying, what might be causing the death of the sport, and, where some of these fighters like Terrence Crawford are at in their careers and why they are not superstars like Floyd Mayweather and Manny Pacquiao. I just want to break all that down, get my 5,000 nickels for anybody.
If we was to fight right now on the streets, I'll break your fucking neck. And that's on my kids. And you know it, I know it, and the whole world know it. And I'm not talking about no fighting in the ring. If me and you was to fight outside, I will break your neck.
All right, y'all. So, Gervonta Davis, Tim Bradley, Terrence Crawford, the state of boxing, what's really going on.
Well, I know you're a lucky man.
So, Tim Bradley recently gave this interview, and he was asked about Gervonta Davis, and is he hurting the sport of boxing? It's kind of a wild question. It's kind of a hard question to answer because, number one, Gervonta Davis, by all stretches of the imagination, is the face of boxing at the moment, and he's probably the number one star in America. Maybe not globally, but he is the number one star in America. So to say that he's killing the sport is a big statement by Tim Bradley. One thing that I think Tim Bradley continuously brought up about Gervonta, or maybe two things, was that Gervonta Davis doesn't fight the best competition. I heard a lot of people say that. And Gervonta Davis doesn't fight frequently enough. So when you talk about Gervonta Davis's competition level, at this state of boxing, Gervonta Davis is one of those guys who doesn't really care about the title belts. He's not in it, trying to become the next big undisputed champion or this, that, and the other to do with the titles. He's kind of in it from a poverty standpoint, being that he was an impoverished kid, a hood kid, street dude, and he found boxing and it just happened to make him money. He's a guy who likes fighting, but you can tell he doesn't like the politics of fighting. When it comes to his resume, a lot of these promoters don't allow their prospects to be put in position to get beat. And that's one of the things that's killing the sport. Now, you can't necessarily blame Gervonta Davis for that because Gervonta Davis is kind of only reacting to what is in front of him. You know, what's in front of him is everybody wants to make money. These are all young guys, and money is the mission now. The titles don't matter. And everybody wants to use him to make money, but where does he turn to for, you know, that mega fight and for people to get off his back? And, you know, because he's won all these fights and by knockout, got a crazy knockout ratio, but people still, you know, they're on him about not fighting the best. But if the best are not coming to you, you had Shannon Briggs chasing Klitschko around the world, you know.
I ain't gonna lie, I ain't into chasing people around.
Fighters used to pursue the guy that they felt like was the top guy, and now fighters only pursue the biggest payday. So for Gervonta Davis, you gotta kind of feel like I'm just gonna fight whoever they put in front of me, and if I make money off of that, I make money off of that, you know, because chasing those titles is only going to open up a bigger can of worms because of the whole situation with the title belts and the promoters and sanctioning bodies holding things hostage. So that's one of the dynamics in the sport, and you can't really, once again, blame Gervonta Davis for something he really can't control. When it comes to Gervonta Davis only fighting once a year, that's the same dynamic. Is if you offer something to another superstar fighter like Lomachenko and he agrees and then he turns it down, then what can you do? We should have been getting a mega fight between Tank and Lomachenko, and it got pulled apart. You know, I know everybody feel like he should have went after Shakur, but on short notice, that's what they could put together was the Lamont Roach fight.
Crawford's going to appeal to the diehard fans. Crawford doesn't appeal to the casual fans. It's not a formula that you can just make up and say, oh, if you do this, then you can be a star. No, you just got to have that it factor. Because Mayweather, when he came up, you know what I mean? A lot of people weren't too fond of his style. A lot of people were saying that he was boring. As soon as he turns into this villain and he's flashy and he's beating them, that's when people started to believe. Now, right after he fought against, I think it was Asa De La Hoya, is when Mayweather really took off. You're talking about a Crawford? Crawford has the skills. He produces knockouts. However, how can you relate to people, you know, that don't watch this on a regular basis? How can you attract them? That's what's missing. That Spence fight, you know, I think that was the most emotion I've ever seen, you know, Crawford doing his entire career. And you can see the difference in the numbers.
So when you think about the next dynamic of him talking about Terence Crawford and why Terence Crawford's not a superstar, you know, I think it's crazy. I think I have to agree that Terence Crawford and Top Rank did a horrible job of promoting themselves and him. Maybe it was just that Top Rank had too many fighters in their stable at the time, and they didn't really know what to do with Terence Crawford. A lot of people say that because they had Crawford and Pacquiao at the time, they should have built Crawford's name off of Pacquiao, or at least put him in there with Pacquiao to see, you know, what he could actually do. And I agree with that. I think the Manny Pacquiao fight would have actually been what made Terence Crawford a superstar, global superstar, because of Manny Pacquiao's reach. Whether he beat Pacquiao or not, it would have been a situation like the Floyd Mayweather Canelo, almost like a passing of the torch. Even though Mayweather beat Canelo, Canelo still was able to get the torch passed to him because he was able to put together a string of wins himself after that and capitalize on that fame. These guys nowadays, they don't capitalize on their fame. Once again, going back to the Shannon Briggs analogy, you know, you don't see Terence Crawford out here. Well, you didn't until the Earl Spence situation, and he did do good numbers on the Earl Spence situation, but then he regressed and did what he always does and goes and fights a nobody in Madrimov and did horrible numbers. And before the Earl Spence fight, he took a money grab fight with David Avanzian, and that kind of ticks fans off because you're supposed to be this talented guy, but you're never showcasing your talent. You're always trying to take that easy road, and nobody brings that up about Terence Crawford. And people will try to fight you if you bring that up about Terence Crawford, that he takes the easy road instead of challenging himself. If he wouldn't have fought David Avanzian and he wouldn't have fought Madrimov, we could have possibly gotten a Terence Crawford-Jerron Boots Ennis fight. We could have possibly gotten a Terence Crawford-Jamel Charlo fight. We could have possibly gotten a Terence Crawford-David Benavidez fight, or a Terence Crawford-Canelo fight, or Terrence Crawford, Earl Spence rematch. So there were all these other options out there, and for him to, kind of, to me, slap the fans in the face and make them pay for some garbage is why the sport is hurting. It's an all-around effort from the fighters to the promoters and everybody involved for why the sport is hurting. So how can we fix the sport of boxing?
Yeah, it's funny you say that because that's what I see with this RIYADH season, right? Who's the biggest star that they have? Canelo Alvarez, and, he's supposed to be fighting against Terrence Crawford, but that's the biggest star that they have, on their roster, under contract, from what I've read. But who is the star that draw the casuals? That's what's missing one in boxing. We're getting guys that usually hold their own or have been holding their own. Now they got to fight somebody. The fact that all the promoters have to basically lend their fighters. So I think that's cool. I think that's great with RIYADH season, kind of bridging that gap. However, a lot of these guys are not stars yet, man. What's really going to save boxing? We need stars in the game. Yes, we need the competition to happen, but the only way you can do that is these guys got to continue to be promoted. They got to be promoted, and they need to be shown on a channel where there's a lot of eyeballs on. I wish it went back to the ABC days, to where boxing was just seen, on regular channel cable, on regular cable.
I took some notes today because I felt like Tim Bradley has stirred up a great conversation, and it needs to be had. I don't know how many people are going to watch this all the way through, but I hope you stick around. So how can you fix the sport of boxing? What needs to be done? Well, I think that one thing, especially with this whole Ring magazine thing that's going on, so you got this big entity of RIYADH season, and Tim Bradley has some things to say about them taking their fights overseas and not hosting them in America. I don't know if that's because of what's going on with politics. I just put it that way, what's going on in politics and them not being able to come over here just yet. Perhaps they have to build some other type of entity that can come over here and do business, where they have to keep it over there and to Europe and things when it comes to overseas. But how can they fix this? So let's say that Ring Magazine is going to be their entity in America, their branch in America. Well, Ring Magazine, to me, the reason that boxing is hurting is because boxing doesn't have its own dedicated space. Every other sport has its own dedicated space. Basketball, when basketball's on, it's on a specific channel. It's on in specific regions. They have their specific fans. And one entity controls that sport. One entity controls football. Now, I know that sounds horrible. You want all this freedom, but the problem is there's too much freedom. So when you try to get these fights together, you got this promoter arguing with this promoter, this fighter arguing with this fighter. In basketball and football and baseball, there's structure. So if there was some structure, like let's say Ring Magazine was to come in, buy a network, dedicate that network. It don't just have to be boxing. It could be all combat sports. But dedicate that network specifically to combat sports. The problem with Showtime and HBO and ESPN and all these other channels is they're not dedicated to boxing. But football does have its own network. It does have its own streaming services. The only thing that's out there is DAZN. And DAZN, I think the reason they're so popular is because they're over in the EU, and that stuff is available on, I think, their regular cable. So if Ring Magazine was to take and make a cable channel dedicated to boxing, I think you would see a lot more people come back to boxing. You could put Jake Paul on there for promotion, to start it out and all these type of things. But that's the main thing. I think number two, what they have to do is they need to make a YouTube channel and make it the same thing. They need a big YouTube channel. It has to be dedicated specifically to boxing and reaching out to boxing fans. It's got to be behind the scenes all the time. You got to feature certain fighters all day, 24/7. And it's got to be dedicated, once again, strictly to boxing. I think number three, I think they got to get the youth involved. I think the youth has to be involved. And I think one of the problems, and probably one of the biggest problems in boxing, it is regionalized. Like, you only see fights in Vegas. You only see fights in, California. You only see fights in New York. We're starting to get fights down in Texas. They need to take this thing nationwide. Boxing needs to be a nationwide sport. It needs to be in every every single state, and it needs to move from state to state to state. They can't just be hometown heroes. This is the reason none of these guys are global or even American superstars. They're really just regional superstars. Earl Spencer's big in Texas. Gervonta Davis is big on the East Coast. You know, Terrence Crawford's big in Omaha, but he's not big everywhere. Now, if these guys were fighting even twice a year, let's say you fought in your home state, then you go and fight in the biggest city in Florida. You know, you have to move this thing around from state to state to state so that you can gather fans. And to me, what's in all of those states? You got college towns, college kids, college basketball arenas, college football arenas. Why they're not utilizing this, I'll never know. And you got these college weekends that are made out of that to where you can take and put fighters on those weekends. So most football games are played on the weekend. You know, you put a boxing match on Friday, and then you have the fans, the college kid participate and do that in a basketball college arena or a football college arena on campus, and boom. You know, the problem is the youth isn't watching boxing. That's a way to easily get the youth involved in the sport of boxing, is to stick it in these college arenas, these college football arenas, these college basketball arenas, and get them in front of the fans you're actually trying to draw within the sport. You know, the old people already watch boxing. Older people already love boxing. The problem is the younger people are more attracted to MMA because it's right there in their face. It's more blood and gore, you know. To me, that's what I think attracts people to it. And I think it's faster. You know, it's faster. Like the TikTok generation, the YouTube short generation, the Instagram reel generation, because it's so quick. They love instant gratification. This is the reason why Gervonta Davis is so exciting, because that wow moment, you know. So a way to draw in the fans, you got to hit these college towns. And I hope Ring Magazine hears this. You got to hit these college towns, man. You got to utilize these college stadiums. You got to get these college kids and these young people involved in the sport of boxing. And to me, I think that's what will save the sport. It's your boy Cardinal Red. That like button for me. Share. Subscribe. Holler at me on all social media platforms. Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, Twitter. But you're more than likely to get a response on the tubes or holler at me over there. You want to collab or feature a product, your channel, on my channel, feel free to hit my Gmail, because it is a flock of cards at gmail.com. And we aren't out of here.
you.